And we're live.
Welcome back, everybody. It's that time. It is that time again. Tarheel by Dark is back with a vengeance. Some of you were able to catch episode 1 of season 2. This, ladies and gentlemen, is episode 2 of the continuing adventures of Tarheel by Dark. We open this scene in the private library, as you see here, of one Prince Sam Josiah, the very, very private library that very few people ever get to lay their eyes on. Plays host tonight to a meeting of idolatry of excuse me, not idolatries, ideologies. It's late, sue me, and a number of philosophical statements. It's as one Harry Walsh has been invited to meet the prince at his library, as well as a few of the other movers and shakers of kindred society. All right, did you guys pick that up, or?
Yeah.
Yep,
We're picking
we
it.
got it.
Okay, make sure you can hear me.
Oh yeah, we can hear you fine. Nate'll just pace around for a second, just kind of looking at all this vast knowledge. And after digging around in the archives in Scotland, he is not looking like a typical, suit-driven self. He's actually wearing something of a leather duster with a club tank top of chainmail, carrying around what appears to be numerous papers, bits of skull and bone fragments, and feathers with writing on it with what appears to be ancient blood. He's just kind of looking, and every now and then scribbling something down. So, you wanted to talk about this paper you were writing.
It's not me that was writing it. I was doing a literature search through a lot of different stuff with regard to projects that I was working on a couple of months ago, and this came across my desk from a some autistic, apparently, amongst the kind, all the way up in British Columbia, all the way up in Canada, apparently wrote this piece and got it published in a journal locally up there, and well, it came across the internet and came across my news feed. So so after reading it, I thought it might be an idea to submit it to the rest of kindred society, because if, God forbid, this, if this system actually takes off amongst the kind and starts gaining traction, we're going to need to figure out, A, is it applicable to our society at all? And B, more importantly, what is our response to it?
Fair enough. Essentially, my thinking is, the fact is that unless it happens outside of closed doors, humans tend to be very close-minded. Okay, you can hear a gunshot go off, and there will be tons of rationalizations. There will be, oh, someone blew a tire, oh, someone set off a firework. Walls insulate. Humans love to hide their heads under the sand. They love not to see things because they like to feel in control. They like to realize, I am the big cheese, I am the top of the food chain. Meanwhile, as a vampire, I realize I am a scary puppy compared to some of the stuff that's out there. And that's a scary realization for someone that thinks they're in control of their own little universe, whether that's their family, their church, or whatever. They like to believe in control, like some people like to believe in God. They like to believe that they are in charge of their existence, like some people like to snort heroin. It's unbelievable. The fact is, they like to insulate themselves from ideas that damage that feeling of solipsistic well-being.
Yeah, I'm beginning to. I actually had the problem of trying to deprogram three of my new childer from this particular problem.
Whew. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. Such a charming little idea, probing the human psyche. Yep. He just kind of nervously runs his hands through his strawberry blonde hair, just kind of looking around, just
Yeah.
looking at obvious book titles, trying to figure out if anything is applicable to this vast pages of notes that he's working on.
Walsh,
Oh,
Walsh, meanwhile, has been Walsh, while walking and talking, has also been looking at the books and specifically looking for category numbers, a Caesarian, a Dewey, or some other version of a catalog that he can peruse through in the library.
Sam,
In other words, if there's an indexing system.
Sam appears to use the not entirely sure, either U.S. Library of Congress customized or Dewey. It's a little hard to tell because the numbers you're seeing don't exactly correspond to the same kind of numbers that you're used to seeing at your research.
Right. Walsh is still trying to figure this out and is still waiting for the prince to arrive, of course.
As soon as Sam gets here, I'm sure he'll have a wealth of experience to speak on the subject, but usually humans don't like to expand their minds very much. Believe it or not, indoctrination kind of goes very well with them, whether it's political parties or faiths or what have you. Individuals tend to be incredibly intelligent, whereas the more diverse and large a group, the more those intelligences, those little bits of knowledge will get compromised in the hope of appearing intelligent or the hope of belonging to the collective and feeling greater than themselves, because in some deep psychological level, they like to realize, hey, I'm not alone, even though I insulate myself at every turn.
Yeah. Sorry, who's speaking?
Oh no, you're fine. Go on.
Walsh is literally playing the paper over in his mind. I'm just going to screen share this way people can actually see what he's looking at in his mind. Let me see here. I think this is the one. Let's see. Does that screen share okay?
Hang on, it's coming up.
Yeah, it's being slow, but it's coming up.
Okay. Walsh is playing over the first page or so of the first page and a bit of the paper in his mind. And as he's going through the first 6 premises, he says to Nathaniel, "You're right. It's just that these particular premises almost seem to appeal to that self-interest motivation that we all describe. But it seems like the idea of we're working from premises that almost seem to appeal directly to the self-interest in this thing, and then trying to extrapolate from the immediate individual self-interest to a place in society. At least that's how it comes across to me."
Yeah, the problem with this is that you consider humans massively ego-driven, egocentric nutcases with a severe superiority complex when a lion could eat their face. Consider a centuries-old vampire that can feed off human blood and go about for centuries unseen and unchecked and unchallenged, except by kindred society as a whole. Then you're looking at a massive ego with a super ego complex, the likes of which most people have never even seen. The fact is, while I'm just giving you rational criticism here, vampires don't like to be challenged. They don't like to be confronted with the fact that humans might start paying attention.
Somewhere among the books you hear a that's for sure.
Mm.
Walsh turns to the sound of the voice or tries to follow and locate it.
This face, wearing his crutches, walking with his crutches, comes from around one of the shelves, holding up his phone, and on it you can see another familiar face. Give me a second.
Hmm.
Oh, where are you? There you are. You see this familiar face.
Uh-huh.
And he seems to be showing the phone to the books, showing David around. This is, and Harry says, "Oh, hello, gentlemen. Just showing David around." Said, yes, that one." And he reaches up, pulls a book down, and flips through it. Um, some random book on religion.
Mm-hmm. Walsh is seeing the title that is dropped down, references a later part in the paper, and I will locate the relevant page, so this way people can actually see the where apparently this paper is actually referenced various aspects of religion. It's not this page; it's the next one. Yes, here we go. Religious morality, especially when discrimination is involved, such as discrimination against the LGBTQ community. We'll screen share again, so this way you can see what Walsh is quoting. Here we go. Yeah, it should pick it up. But anyway, he basically he remembers that there are appeals to religious texts or customs. One is appealing to authority or tradition or popularity, depending on which fallacy is being invoked. And Walsh adds the commentary in his own head. We find it interesting that the appeal to ancient, and this is his own internal thought process. As he sees the book, he says, I find it interesting that this paper actually references the appeal to religious morality, at least especially when particular narrow viewpoints are involved, considering the discrepancy we just had between those who actually follow Christianity in our community and the 7, and apparently a large group of people amongst the kind not being able to tell the correct difference between the two. I remember the debates I had with the leader a while back.
Yes, some people, and this is from David. Yes, some people believe their asymptotes to be a little bit farther to the right.
Yeah.
But
the question,
but it's actually
the question that I have then, the question that I have then, Duke Menashe says Walsh, extrapolating this, could potentially this system that we're all looking at here, or some variant thereof, could this at least be a way of being able to distinguish between the correct way to follow the correct way to follow the teachings of God and the less correct way to follow the teachings of God? Could there be a self-reflection or examination process which might allow us to steer our efforts a little bit more effectively?
Ashford just looks amused.
If they would actually read the they claim to follow. Here I know in part, and you see on the camera, he's slapping his hands. Here I know in part and prophesy in part, yet they're in full.
Yep. And Walsh actually then scrolls back to another page in the paper. Sorry, I'm just trying to get this all in here. Where was it?
While he's trying to find it, they don't get it.
Yep. And Walsh actually says Walsh actually refers to derivation 10. What is morally right can therefore be inferred for any situation from these premises and the previous conclusions based on best available scientific data. However, obtaining perfect moral conduct is as impossible as obtaining 100% knowledge via science, and to demand is invoking the call for perfection fallacy. And he literally just recites the bit that's on the screen there and says, isn't this precisely it then, that people, if we drew from the book, which is the truth, could this not be considered yet another source of raw data that God provided about the world?
Honestly, everything written, if we use this system of logic, is something that God provided, because God is the provider of everything. This is the kind of problem with it.
And this is precisely why I'm going back to the empirical system. Sorry.
When you filter it through humans, you get erroneous data. That's the issue.
Yeah. And and Walsh says, and this is precisely, and this is precise, and this is very true with that premise 10 that derivation 10 that was mentioned. But the point is, though, is that at least if we can trace it back to nature, if we can somehow trace it back to nature and from just actual fact, and from that extrapolate to where we're working, could we potentially find a way to know the mind of God, as Einstein once said? Sorry, out of character, I may have inadvertently quoted that incorrectly. So whoever said to know the mind of God, it was either Einstein or Spinoza, but
either way, the problem is, even if we could theoretically know the mind of God, because the brain has only about 3 terabytes of data, our head would explode trying to comprehend it, and that would be about pointless.
And you hear over the phone, I was going to say the same thing. To witness the mind of God is to die.
And of course, Walsh, responds back to, hang on, I'm trying to find the, where is it here? Shit, where's that section on pursuit of objective reality? There is a very...
Well, the problem with this, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
The problem with this is perception as well. Because individuals are, as I said, often very much smarter than collectives, because collectives have compromising thoughts because they want to belong to something greater than themselves. The fact is, when you consider concepts like morality, good, evil, bad, wrong, right, whatever, you're considering a person's point of view on that subject. A mafioso might see the law as a horrible, horrible thing, but a square Joe like, say, you, would consider them, honestly, probably just as any other human would. The fact is that perspective has a lot to do with morality, your perspective on reality, how you even interact with the basic world around you, because an illiterate person wouldn't even know what the fuck you're talking about. And then there is just so much to consider, because you're never going to get humanity to agree on a single damn thing, let alone massive doctrines. I mean, let's just take Christianity, for example. Christianity is one thing, which is a monotheistic religion that believes in a God. There are how many sects and derivations of that? Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds?
You hear a chuckle from the phone. Don't get me started.
Exactly.
It all comes down to, sometimes it all comes down to how people worship, and people get upset about it.
That's very true.
Humans are faulty. We are faulty.
The pursuit of an objective reality is like trying to get the retarded kid to stop humping the doorknob when all he's trying to do is feel good when he doesn't understand the reality around him. That's the problem.
We may have to guide, much as I hate to say this, says Walsh, I get the feeling that if this system is going to work at all, whatever this, this guy came up with, it's going to require a system whereby we're actually even trying to get the more basic aspect of people just to recognize the reality around them, whatever it happens to be.
Exactly.
Of course, we know certain things that we're not allowed to do because we're not allowed to breach the masquerade. I'm not saying we should. I'm not saying we should. That's there are certain things that would basically screw a mortal's mind well beyond.
Yes, not even questioning it. No,
I'm not questioning breaching the masquerade. What I am saying is, however, is that there are hints at something. There are hints at something bigger, and I'm reminded of something that Wraith said before he vanished off in the church when I first came around here. Sorry, I'm just reminded of something he said. He was talking about the balance between faith and reason, and there being a conversion between the two. But what I was going to actually say is that maybe what this system is trying to propose, and maybe what we could start working on from our perspective, is that there's bound to be an interaction between the supernatural and the physical, right? There's bound to be an interaction between the two. God has left his imprint in the world.
Now, it depends on who you're asking. Okay, now, going from our perspective simply, there is a conversion point between the spiritual and the physical, yes. Because the blood we take in is not only a metaphysical representation of the human life force we absorb, but it is also an aspect of spiritual currency which we burn to perform the various acts of disciplines that we use. It's also, just on the metaphysical standpoint, a life force as well as death. There's honestly aspects and points to everything. That the whole thing is, reality is contingent on a whole bunch of mirrors and smoke and connections to other things. The problem is, it's a very persistent illusion that wants to work. So it's working. That's the same way with the economy. Gold is valuable by humans, therefore they will accept it and they'll trade on it. That's exactly how it works.
And all the economic models.
As you guys are continuing to discuss, you notice from the corner of your eye that there is a large table placed at the intersection, if you will, of where a number of the various bookshelves meet. On this table is a series of books with a note that reads, "Use at your leisure. It will be there."
So you said
There are four books that are sitting on this table. There is a note that reads, "Review at your leisure. I will be there momentarily." And it's signed by them. Those four books being Buckland's Complete Book of Witchcraft, Bushido, The Way of the Samurai by Yamato, a copy of the Holy Bible,
Well, on that last
We
one,
missed the last two books.
yeah, you're
New Living Translation, Holy Bible, Thomas Paine's The Age of Reason.
Okay.
Yep. Walsh goes over and thumbs through these. Walsh goes over and thumbs through. What was the translation of the Bible again?
New
Which
Living.
version?
NLT.
Okay, New Living Translation. Okay. Walsh. Okay, now I actually have to pull up this thing because Walsh knows most of these books from eidetic memory, but due to backstory. But I'm going to have to actually pull these things up.
You also noticed that the copy of the Bible that's there, that specifically Proverbs, the chapter of Proverbs 17 has been earmarked.
Proverbs 17. Okay. Let me pull that up because that's going to be important. Translation Bible Gateway. Enter passage keyword Proverbs 17. All right, this is what I'm looking for.
Same idea.
Which verse?
Beginning at verse, looks like it's been highlighted, beginning at verse 13.
Verse 13. Do you pay with
13. Okay. Oh. As Harry looks over at what you're looking at and shows it to David, David starts to say, "Whoso rewardeth evil for good, evil shall not depart from his house. The beginning of strife is as when one letteth out water. Therefore leave off contention before it be meddled with. He that justifieth the wicked, and he that condemneth the just, even they both are abomination to the Lord."
Walsh literally fixates on verse 15. But he also remembers, but then his eyes widen at verse 16. His eyes widen at verse 16, and he's like,
"Wherefore is there a price in the hand of a fool to get wisdom, seeing he hath no heart to it?" Those playing the home game, this is obviously not the New Living.
No. David is clearly reading from a different translation.
Yeah.
But the fact is that Walsh reading the New Living Translation is like there's parts in here which automatically confirm what this paper's saying, about acquitting the guilty and condemning the innocent are both detestable to truth. But at the same time, he sees it's senseless to pay to educate a fool since he has no heart for learning. Walsh literally raises an eyebrow, and his first thought is this all futile?
I would like to pose a question. Now, you're looking for a more objective vision of reality. The problem is that it's all objective. We all have different aspects of reality. I, for one, am... Yeah, exactly.
You immediately get interrupted from the phone. That's subjective. Objective is concrete.
But that's the problem. We're all experiencing it, therefore it's concrete to the person experiencing.
No, my dear boy. That is subjective. Because it matters for the subject experiencing it.
Okay.
Concrete facts are all that could be considered objective.
Okay. What's a concrete fact? Give me an example. One example.
Gravity on Earth pulling us at 9.81 meters per second squared.
Okay, that's perfectly reasonable. But everyone experiencing that. Now, if there was an individual who could fly, does that make any bearing on gravity existing, or what? You're honestly trying to find a universal system that cannot apply to the individual. Because, unfortunately, you look at society, you look at grander schemes, you look at machinations of any huge machine, and everyone's going to have a different view on it. Objective reality is like trying to ask someone to willingly blind themselves because they stop experiencing life.
Walsh pauses for a moment, replays in his head, for anyone who might be watching in his head, replays derivation 10 again. The one where it was just about, where it was just like, obtaining 100% knowledge in science is impossible.
Mm-hmm.
Walsh replays that in his head again, comes back out and says, the point with this system, at least from what I can tell, is not so much that we're trying to achieve the objective, is not that we're going to achieve the objective reality, but that in our approach towards it, we're getting closer and closer and being able to discover closer and closer to the truth. I'm trying to remember a specific Bible verse.
More rewarding than the destination.
The journey, exactly. Walsh says exactly.
This is from Harry. This is from Wallace.
Yeah, the journey itself. The journey itself has a lot of byproducts. Even the first premises, and I'm going to scroll back up again because, Walsh.
You muted.
You muted yourself.
There. I'll try again.
Okay. As I was saying, Walsh has an eidetic memory. My memory is a little memory is a little off. But he does give one of his, he goes back to premise 3 in the very first page. When we obtain knowledge, it seems our lives improve if we can figure out how to use that knowledge.
Exactly. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You can have all the knowledge in the world, but if you have no idea on how to use it, what use is it to you? You could be an absolute genius with computers, but if you're living in a Neolithic era where all you're trying to do is hunt down a freaking woolly mammoth or something, it's not going to have any bearing. And I'm trying to understand this, and forgive me, I do have a very old mindset, but I'm trying to point something out. We're vampires.
Yep.
The very fact... Okay.
Sorry, there's a specific derivation I'm trying to find here. Where is it? It was pertaining to relevancy. There was an actual reference pertaining to relevancy. Thus, the individual, as well as the collective responsibility to share information, knowledge, etc., including others, determining. I know there was a section here about determining relevancy. Pardon?
Top right of page 21.
It's on the right. It's on the right hand of page 21.
Yep.
Yeah, top right of page 21. And for those viewers who may be watching this now or in the future, there will be a link to download this paper in the description of this video whenever you would like to, whenever this gets published.
Sorry. Okay, let's see. Where is it here? Right-hand side of page 21. Crap, where did I put the relevancy factor?
No, so
Oh, here we go. Yeah, derivation 8. Derivation 8. One may also infer that taking data out of context will distort the truth and as such hinder learning, so it behooves every agent to do one's best to take everything in context and to find the relevancy of all data so that one may pursue one's understanding of objective reality. Walsh responds with that, isn't the whole point of this exercise then that we're also that part of the empirical process would be to determine the relevancy of data given to any given situation? Effectively, we're tying the data. You know, part of learning the data is also learning the wisdom as to how to use the data.
If only all vampires were Nosferatu.
Oh,
Walsh's ears perk up at that. Walsh's ears perk up at that. And Walsh actually pulls a book out of his sorry, he's carrying a backpack with him, and this book is going to be pertinent in a moment. Walsh literally pulls out a book called Differential Equations and Boundary Value Problems. And he literally says, there's enough mathematical modeling work in here alone that I've been teaching to grad students that I could easily convert back into a program that might be able to enhance the Nosferatu systems, says Walsh. And that's just the tip of the iceberg I've been working on while I've been reading this paper.
A familiar voice is heard at the mention of the Nosferatu.
Yep.
Okay, first of all, there is no reason for anyone to want to look or smell like that to feed. Trust me. And secondly, you cannot look. To do anything to this sexy, beautiful face to make me look like you would be a sin. We all know that.
So objectively, you're saying that it would be wholly sacrilege for Nathaniel Asher to be embraced Nosferatu.
Being sexy on the outside and being sexy on the inside are two different things, Mark.
Well, getting back to another point.
And Harry quickly mutes the phone before you could tell the tirade was going to continue. Harry mutes the phone.
Yeah.
And then whenever he starts it back.
Well,
I apologize. I don't know what came over me.
Fair enough.
Carry on.
But moving back to simple facts, what designates attractiveness? What designates anything? Everyone perceives the world differently. That's the problem. Is you're not trying to get everyone to think on the same pages. You're trying to build another system and hopefully eradicate some of the complications. But the problem is that people are overly complicated.
Well, we may not need to destroy the. We may not need to override the complications, says Walsh as he flips through his backpack again. And once again, I'm actually going to bring this one up.
Complication.
This actually ties directly into to something you've been working on, David. Graph theory, specifically with network communications. A lot of the stuff regarding graph theory, etc., has been tied into game theory and models like that, which do predict and model human behavior to a certain extent, especially in higher dimensional models. My thought is, though, is that rather than remember where the paper says about the frontline worker in retail writing his experiences up, every one of them doing it? What if we were actually able to put a heuristic algorithm on this such that we were able to, see word correlations and phrase correlations and see consistent experience the consistent experiences cropping up by having, intelligent and mathematically programmed computers making these analyses? We wouldn't necessarily have to do it for manipulation. We could do it to understand where problems are in the human system. And by extension, we're a lot fewer as vampires. We could do this kind of analysis far more easily with the smaller groups that we have.
The problem is you're talking about problems in the human system. There's so many human systems. Are you talking about economics? Are you talking about spirituality? Narrow it down a little. Narrow it down. Are you just talking about thinking?
I'm just I'm thinking that we could apply this system to each individual subdiscipline one at a time. I mean, economics. The only reason that they've been going so badly is because of the fact that they're out of touch not only with the human condition, but they're out of touch with the physical reality. Where they're out of touch with environmental reality. I mean, Walsh actually flips back up to. I'm going to have to screen share again. Walsh flips up to references to the handy model, which was, where did I put that?
You bring up the excellent point for economics, Mr. Walsh, but I'd also like to remind you that the reason that economics do not work is solely because of the fact that the economic models that you have been looking at and the economic models that are taught to most of these kids that are in their schools and in their universities is because these models do not apply to the everyman. Even though the text will state as such, I'm here to tell you that it's a straight up lie. It's for those of us who do have financial security, and I believe the very largest majority of the kindred population does. That financial security has been obtained through a number of ways, way different than those economic models recommend and state.
I
For,
mean,
for
simply because of
the
um
average person, it won't work.
exactly. Simply because of the fact that we no longer have to eat, we save hundreds. I mean, simply a week, even if we had a menial job. Um, the fact is that reality for each person is very much true to them while it's happening, and that's the fact. But it's at the same time physically impossible to narrow down the human condition into objective systems because they're trying to be, they're trying to do and live in it at the exact same time. What you're suggesting is a very scholarly life and possibly a very noble idea. The fact is, though, is that people have so much to do. Even I am, who am no longer a person. There's so much to consider, so much to think about. I mean, even just from the regular political one-upsmanship that we go through night by night, it all keeps us so very busy. You're what you're saying is putting aside everything and putting it through the funnel of this system will immediately make us more objectively better at whatever we're doing, even if it's to through some mundane primitive spirituality completely debunk the system, which doesn't make much sense. I mean, let's be honest. Life is about being and living and doing and taking advantage of your situations. It's not about what appeals morality wise. That was a concern of society. The individual is meant to look after themselves and those around them. They're not meant to look after society as a whole, and that's the problem.
It's not so much that morality, as you have said, for and I do apologize for coming in late. I had a bit of a incident that I needed to take care of, which is funny you mentioned that since we're on the subject of morality. Morality is very much varied from man to man, from woman to woman, from child to child. You'll take the you'll take the existence, for example. If we look at situations where the little man, as we like to refer to them, those who make, living on a minimum wage at the moment. It's perfectly more the we all know that it is 100% legal to sell food stamps from the American government, but illegality has never stopped a criminal from committing a crime if they were hell bent on it. Case in point, there are several families that live in my district right now that sell 70 to 75% of what the government gives them on their card every month. And the reason why that is because their food and nutrition service only covers exactly that thing. Where are they going to get their where are they buying plastic? How are they putting fuel in their vehicle?
Yeah.
They're not going to do that.
Oh,
They're not going to do that for a food stamp card. And
Yep.
by the purpose of mentioning that is, while it's, society says it's illegal and immoral, those families don't see it that way because those families are doing what they have to do to survive. Much the same way that we here in the Kindred community now, Mr. Ashford over there, and I think it's already public knowledge by now that he and I have had our share of chess matches in the past. And while there are certain certain lines that Mr. Ashford will not cross, I, on the other hand, have no problem crossing those lines, and vice versa. There's more ones that I won't cross that I'm sure that he will, and that is 100% because of the way that we as individuals look at the way that the battle is going.
Hmm. The problem is when you come down to it, from an individual perspective, removing society, removing governments, removing all of it down, we're each our own judge and jury. It all comes down to what we want to accept and what we don't. And that's the problem. Societies are geared to benefit the people at the top. They're not meant to benefit every individual.
Even if we could hypothetically find a way, using a system such as this, to try to find a way to benefit every individual as much as possible from having their particular stories and their experiences taken in. And, we have mathematical models for the overarching things, but we tailor it to individual empirical cases necessary. Balance between the two.
Well, I'm not trying to take the wind out of your sails, not at all. But what I mean is, how do we reward them for life experience? How do we reward? Do we monetize life stories? What do we do? What are you? I mean, it's all fine in theory because it sounds absolutely fantastic. But the problem is
How do
there's
we
so
incentivize it?
exactly.
I've got an idea, but I really need to talk to I've got an idea on how to do this. But the problem is though is that correct me if I'm wrong right now. We are about 7 billion worldwide in terms of the kind population at the moment.
Just about.
Okay, so 7 billion, and what are our numbers at last check? Do we even know what the numbers of actual kindred across the planet are right now?
Broad stroke, several thousand.
At maximum.
Okay, so at maximum several thousand, we have more of a if my understanding of history is correct, and what we had to deal with the Dark Ages, we have way more in the way of buffer protection for masquerade than we ever did.
Mm-hmm.
Because, well, I mean, not counting the social media technology, I'm talking about in terms of the food supply catching on. We have way more buffer zone than we originally did, right?
Exactly.
So what if we set up a system? What if we set up a system whereby this is just a thought here. Take it for what you will. What if we were able to set up a reward system whereby I know they talk about in here the idea of getting rid of patent law. Where was it? Is it
You muted, bud.
Yeah, you muted yourself.
I muted myself?
Yeah.
Hang on. Let me unmute.
You're fine. You're
You
fine
did.
now.
Okay.
Just
Walsh as he's scrolling through the paper in his head says, I distinctly remember there being a section in here about how not only resources should be available and technology should be available to every person, but basically that that there is resources should be distributed in a way that not only meet individuals' basic needs, but replication discoveries can be done. And the average person can apply their own minds to innovation. Walsh says, my thinking on that is if we got rid of patent law and we actually made it where individual people not only got the resource for their basic living, but were given credit for some unique innovation for both humankind and kindred kind. Like the Nobel Prize winners, for example. If we open that up as to more fields that could be generated in with individual life experiences or individual innovations being created, we could adapt those innovations and give them start credit by, say, ghouling them. And then eventually, the more they innovate, the more we can bring them into our system. I'm not saying we have to do it for a large number of people, but at least we can incentivize a strategy up to that. I mean, with the buffers that we have.
Of equal allocation on resources looks good on paper, but what that paper is not taking into account is the fact that resources are finite.
Yeah. The problem
For
with
now.
that, The problem with that idea, and I'm just going to simplify it down to basic logic. We're pretty powerful vampires in our own individual rights based on certain skills, abilities, whatever, what have you. But there are always going to be bigger men. Bigger fishes everywhere. And,
Well, there's, yeah.
okay,
There is a way to
go
address the
on.
resource problem. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Okay, 1 minute. Now,
Yeah.
the idea of sharing out resources is perfectly wonderful because being poor at the start of my mortal life and much of the way through it, I understand the scarcity of resources. However, the people at the top who manage those resources by various proxies, government agencies, what have you, will not like that idea one damn bit because that means they have less of a toy chest to play with. How in the world are you going to break every power base of every individual on the planet simply to better the world at large when most individuals are incredibly greedy? That's not going to work.
I need to make an intelligence occult roll at this time. Out of character, I need Walsh to make an intelligence occult roll.
How many dice is that for you, buddy? I got it.
That should be 5. Hang on, let me see what his occult score is.
Gotcha.
Specialty prodigy. If you catch any 10s.
Okay. How many?
How many?
Pardon?
What?
6
Five.
dice.
You were saying both. Okay, so it's total 6. Okay.
Yeah, total 6 dice.
Okay, gotcha. And 1, 10, 10, 5, 2, 7. So you have 2 successes, and from the 7, another one. So 3.
Okay, so Walsh from the 2 successes says, now correct me if I'm wrong. We are also dealing with a discrepancy problem in terms of reality at the moment. Out of character, Walsh spoke to Ekman, which means that he probably has a bit of an understanding as to what Ekman went through, right?
Probably, somewhat. At least a little.
Okay, well, Walsh says, my understanding of what we're dealing with right now is that there's one reality that we perceive, the sort of scientific reality that we're dealing with, right?
Fair enough.
Now, this kind wrote a footnote. This kind wrote a footnote in the paper, which says, yes, there is a problem of limited resources, but space travel can address that problem via significantly more solar energy and mining the moon and asteroids. A detailed argument for this can be found in O'Neill 1976, and Walsh doesn't go. Walsh recites the reference of the High Frontier. Correct me if I'm wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong, says Walsh. We are dealing with a near infinite space. We are dealing with a near infinite space, but that space is occupied by other groups. Correct?
More than likely, intelligent life has to be out here.
Okay, so here's my thinking. What if we were able to set this up in such a way that at least the resources in the asteroid belt, just beyond Mars, that section alone, before it flips into the other groups that we know, the mages, the wolves, the whatever else is out there, if those sections were provided for all of humanity, humanity would have enough resource base in its own area to last for, if memory serves from that reference when I saw it, I saw a reference about 50,000 years, of about 50,000 years of resources that could be, and with recycling, and as long as the sun lasted, again, Walsh is literally trying to work from the scientific angle here. He has no, out of character, he has no idea what Ekman knows.
Yeah,
so it's like, but basically he's like, okay, well, supposing that we had, supposing we had the sun lasting for a few more billion years, a couple more billion years, and we have the asteroid belt lasting about 50,000 years via straight mining, but recycling would allow us to expand that, far enough indefinitely, near about as long as the sun lasts. That would provide the resource base to allow humanity to do that thriving, and we could recycle as necessary. And what we could do in order to address the problem of population growth growing too far is that the only the ones who show true innovation get to go out to space, and the other ones that start becoming true innovation but can't go up to space for other reasons, we embrace, and we can keep a balance that way. Am I completely out to lunch here? Says Walsh.
At this point, Wallace goes, so you're suggesting we make others like us?
Not necessarily entirely. I'm just proposing that may be a possible reward, but there may be other rewards that might be available. Okay. Forget the embraceal. Forget the embraceal. But what about the first part that I mentioned? The idea that people can go to the true innovators can get to go to the frontiers of space, where within our area, to be able to work out their ideas and their ingenuity there.
Honestly, I love the idea. The problem is that you will find a lot of people that are very comfortable on Earth. There's a large cartel of businesses, a large cartel of people with huge amounts of paper money that are very valuable on Earth that wouldn't be valuable anywhere else. Aliens would look at them and go, "Great, you brought something to burn. Now we can have a fire to roast this pig because the aliens are smart." The problem is that the human system would then fall apart because they could just go somewhere else. They could honestly find a better standard of living in the great beyond of space, and that's the problem. While people are trapped and while people are disadvantaged, they can be used and abused. That's exactly why oligarchies happen.
And Walsh then says, and this is why I'm wondering whether or not we as vampires or we as kindred have a unique position whereby we can use our advantage with manipulating the cartels to create to turn the disadvantage, to stop the disadvantage from happening, so this way people can go out and start exploring more. And
okay. I love this idea. The problem is you would have to talk to a buttload of Intru that are a lot older than me and did not have my upbringing as a poor person, and that's not going to be easy at all. You'd have to get the Bruja to start agreeing with themselves. There would be so much that you would have to do.
You have to talk, and the phone says, David says, and you'd have to talk to Nosferatu, older than me, and that's going to be difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
And
yeah.
another familiar voice is heard from some distance away, approaching, almost as if the voice is walking toward you, and the voice that voice to be Sam. You also fail to account for the fact that the largest majority of the existing kind population are descendants of either European settlers, or if you go back far enough in history, descendants of warmongers and warlords. A simple reference of Genghis Khan is enough to understand this. We also look at the name type as well, a benchmark for previous Rome, because of the fact that Carthage to be getting, to borrow a southern term, too big for its britches. As long as we continue
I'm out of character, Will. You might want to scoot closer. I'm having a bit of trouble hearing.
Okay.
There you go.
As long as we continue to believe that humanity will exist in a vacuum of understanding what is good and what is good and what is evil, the paper works. But that's just something simply we just can't accept. We can't assume that. Though there are plenty of people on the council here that are more than willing to move forward with the more progressive elements of how I set up that council. Yet there are just as many, if not more, that are stonewalling these ideas simply because they either because they believe they hold tradition to be high in their mind, or because they just simply have ulterior personal motives. And as long as yes, we are blessed or cursed, depending on how you look at it, to be able to walk the night forever, unless assuming no outside interference happens. But that curse also should also get us to understand that the beast is what it is, and even though the beast of does not apply solely to the kindred condition, the entire reason why this exists is because the beast has always been there. It's the driving force that causes man to war against man. It's the driving force that causes man to lay down with woman.
Exactly. It's that little voice inside the human head that says, I want more. I need this thing. There's always going to be an id and a superego, whether that takes the form of humanitas, whether that takes the form of some sort of ethical system, whether that takes the form of different individual moralities like my own. The fact is, there will always be drives, and those drives exist for a reason because they enabled humanity to survive. They're good things. I mean, aside from the fact that psychopaths and sociopaths are utterly horrible people that have no empathy and no understanding of pain, no understanding of how to control themselves, they are very efficient beings, sadly. Now, the fact is, that as vampires, it's very easy to be sociopathic. It's very easy to descend into a very instant satisfaction kind of existence. The fact is, as a trickster, as a criminal, as a gambler, as a pagan, as someone who's always quested for answers, it's up to Nathaniel Ashford to find the things that he wants to find. It's not up to the greater community. I'm sorry. The fact is that even though I'm a completely unlawful individual who would probably chaotically slit a man's throat over a grudge, I still hold certain things sacred. That's why this deal over Elysium has pissed me off to no end. Violation of space and peace and sacred customs is kind of foul. I'm sorry, we all need a place where we can meet and discuss like this, or else we fall down into animalism. We have no way to converse like reasonable adults, and that's sad.
Walsh literally, you actually see a single tear of blood hit Walsh's eye at these words.
Mhm.
Walsh says, I think what the author was trying to get at, and maybe if I'm understanding this correctly, is that maybe he was trying to perpetuate this idea of the ability to have a space where we can discuss and move. That this discussion itself is the process, and the more we can expand this discussion and continue actually deriving something out of it that we can lead to action, all we will do is descend back into animalism and possibly turn ourselves in on ourselves.
Exactly. And that's the problem. Is in the American political system alone, you're losing the ability to reasonably discourse because people are so angry and so passionate because they think it's good to stick to your guns, it's good to be yourself, it's good to have this individualism, it's good to remain who you are, and to a certain extent that's true. But the problem is the people that have listened to this and listened to this and listened to this are not reasonable individuals. They are foolish, angry, bitter, and most often with Trump supporters, amusingly, they want to hurt someone else. They want to get even. They hold grudges. That's the fact. Nathaniel Ashford doesn't hold grudges. He gets even and then he moves on. The sad fact is, I can derive all kind of satisfaction from all kind of superficial, emotional, and spiritual wounds without going into plunging the entire planet into disarray. You need to make smarter criminals if you're going to deal with these kinds of people.
The human condition. This is Sam speaking. The human condition is that it is flawed. It's and the quest for perfection comes solely from the acknowledgement that, as human beings, that the kind are flawed. And I will I will go so far as to extend that thought to to the kindred population. I'll go as far as to extend it to the Garou population up there on the mountain. There is no such thing as perfection, though this knowledge should not in any way prevent the attempt to achieve so. It's a push towards enlightenment. Now, to say that is also to say that this push towards enlightenment should never supersede reality. That there are those that simply will choose to not take this path, and to force one to force one onto that path is to strip that person's free will. And humanity, as flawed as it is, must have that free will in order for it to survive. We, as I'm sure you probably are aware, those of myself and Mr. Ashford, we are so cursed that we may only receive nourishment from specific types of individuals. Now, if the whole of the kind population is made to fall into line to one sense of thinking, to one mind, to one order, while it looks good on paper, that effectively eliminates the entire Ventrue clan.
Well, maybe not me, but that would still make it slightly more difficult for me to exist. And I wouldn't like that. I'm sorry. I would be out there immediately destroying any system that enabled ugly people to prosper so much that it would make it impossible for me to feed. Good God. Holy
Yeah,
hell.
Walsh is stroking his beard thoughtfully at all of this. You know, Walsh says, so correct me if I'm understanding then, we're effectively trying to, so effectively then the idea of trying to completely understand the idea of trying to understand reality in its total form would quite literally actually would actually force people onto a path that they weren't intending to be and would effectively start oppressing other groups within our own community.
Exactly. And the sad fact is, the very point of life and existence is that we see through one person's eyes. We are not meant to exist as collective gestalt beings. That's a very compromise of what it means to be human or kindred or Garou or mage or whatever. You are you. You are not the collective. You are not society. You define what is right for you. That's the point. Reality is a interesting and complex mistress, but you're never going to understand it because you're only one person. And you're not supposed to. You're supposed to be and do and make the best out of your life. Maybe leave something better for your children or the next generation, which is what most humans want to do. Sadly, they are oppressed by the boots of the rich, the powerful, whatever. Their bosses, the president, whoever's up on the ladder above them going, I want to kick up here.
Walsh turns to Duke Menashe.
Or turns to Harry, and Harry.
Turns to Harry and Duke Menashe. And he texts a little, well, I'll just say it out loud, but he quietly texts Red Owl and says, you say the Nosferatu might actually adopt a system similar to this.
He texts back, might? Question mark. Have.
Walsh actually turns to one. Walsh actually opens up and texts back a file involving some of the stuff that the metadata analysis that the NSA and the CIA originally used, because he'd been looking into that sort of thing, and said, I can develop mathematical models based on this to actually, which combine with the quantum computer and Ekman's ideas, and he's literally he's typing stuff that he's been working on, and says, if you have the know-how to adopt this system, I have the tech to make it happen. Can we talk at a private point to arrange this?
You get a text back, and Harry is looking at his phone while you can see on the screen Red Owl's doing this,
Yep.
and they're scratching his head like, "What are you?"
Yeah.
And you get a text back. Um,
As this is going on, Sam simply turns and he beelines for a specific place, it seems, on in the library as he motions for the collective to follow him.
Walsh follows him.
As he does so, he reaches over, grabbing the ladder there, and he ascends it to the fifth or sixth shelf of the library. When he returns, he hands what looks like a document sealed in some type of acetate to Mr. Walsh. I think you'll find a lot of inspiration, maybe clarity, may be a better word, a better term in that document.
Walsh takes a look at the document and opens the acetate very carefully with his penknife.
What you have before you is a copy of Jefferson's Declaration of Independence. This copy looks to be excruciatingly old.
Now, if you were to look at a stoner,
Specifically the opening paragraph.
Let me pull up the Declaration of Independence again to get the exact opening paragraph, or maybe it should be read out loud for the benefit of the viewers.
Do so.
oh. Now, the hilarious thing is, Nate is extrapolating on this. Now, if you were to look at a stoner who was to consider himself the ultimate patriot, he would find nothing better to do than to roll up this document made of ancient hemp and smoke it. That is a waste and a horrible thing, but there are still people that would want to do it because humans are humans.
oh, Walsh gets a text back. Time and place will be sent soon.
Walsh nods. And Walsh, I'm going to have him make that intelligence occult roll again, and this time I'm going to do it myself. 6 dice, specialty prodigy, assuming that he actually does manage to get assuming that he does manage to get any 10s.
I'll do it for you this time. Oh, you
No, I got it.
Never mind.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5 successes.
Okay, and this was for
Walsh has a brainwave, but he doesn't know how to go about it. He only has a brainwave. Walsh says, trying to determine the true system that will balance, trying to determine a true empirical system that will not oppress, but will provide the individual freedoms that are required to make the informed democracy, to make the system that Mr. Prentice proposes work. One of us needs to actually start working on devising this system in a practical way in their own lives. Forget the council, forget the for maybe rather than trying to approach the council with this yet, maybe we need to actually develop a smaller scale approach. One kindred just trying to see if they can adopt, or even a small group of kindred who have already adopted such a system, seeing how it works for them in full form. How do we adopt, and Walsh is trying to articulate, he says, what if we're actually trying to achieve control, not even control over the beast, but we're trying to prevent the beast from distorting our minds to seeing the truth?
Yet again, the beast, at least to this particular individual, and he pats his own rather muscular chest, is just that. It's your elemental humanity that was primitive, that existed before it became unacceptable, unable to be tolerated, to club your neighbor over the head and take his pretty shiny things like his sexy wife, or things that you didn't have. It's essentially those drives that exist in primitive man if you wanted to go after it in the scientific form, it would be the lizard complex, which I believe is buried somewhere in the hindbrain. If you wanted to try and lobotomize that part of your brain, by all means.
David interrupts, if I may. Mr. Walsh, time and place will be sent to you soon. I may have someone.
Walsh raises an eyebrow and says, raises an eyebrow, then nods and says, I'll be waiting. And Walsh says, Walsh says to everyone else, we're still talking along the same lines from what I can tell, but we're concerned so much about the freedom issue. We're concerned about trying to balance the individual and the collective in the same go, where we're trying to arise the collective from the individual, and we're trying to devise a system whereby we can actually take the empirical data that's coming our way into both subjective experiences of people and objective data in a way that will actually help fix the problems of our broken society.
Well,
I don't know if that's feasible.
Let me
I don't know if that's
continue. Okay, let me continue to lay out what is essentially my reality. I would
Okay.
love to improve the lives of the people under my vassalage, because under my leadership they would not exactly be held to such a strict ethical standard. But then again, if everyone was prospering, if economics was booming, if people were not so allegorical, or, if they didn't have so much of a power disparity, then there would be more for me to steal. If they were not quite so free breeding with every low IQ troglodyte that spawned out of the gene pool, I would have more prey. I would be happy. There's less for me to be happy than you would think. Honestly, I just want the freedom to be me and to help out some people in the way of making money so I can steal the money and laugh as I go home.
Walsh raises an eyebrow and says, what is that money that you are stealing tied to anything of real value yet? Should we be expanding the system to be able to generate more innovation, which in turn will generate more money in the long run? Or not just in a few narrow fields, but to really make the money worth something?
Here's the hilarious thing. The barter system makes everything valuable, but the collective that held more of it wanted a uniform system so they wouldn't have to carry around pigs and goats and cows and, things every time they wanted to pay their taxes.
To extrapolate upon that, and again, this is Sam speaking. To extrapolate upon that, the coinage system, or the system of a currency, was also developed solely because of the fact that my 3 pigs were of a certain value to me, yet not of that same value to you. It was developed to make a universal measure of importance, i.e., a $20 bill is worth $20. That's just an accepted fact of everyone in this country. Now, is there anything that backs that $20 bill? Absolutely not. The only thing that makes that piece of cotton worth $20 is because the U.S. government says it's worth $20, and well, we as U.S. citizens, we simply just have to accept that.
So here's my question then. Why are we hoarding all of this? Why are we hoarding all of this? Why are we allowing inflation to continue where the same goods are being worth less and less? I mean, I've seen individual reports and photos and other things like that about how groceries for the kind are getting less every time, yet are getting worth less, and we are hoarding just the resource counter, when chances are we're using up more resources to hoard that counter than can actually be bought. All of a sudden, the line of Rudyard Kipling flashes through through Walsh's mind. And although we had plenty of money, there was nothing our money could buy. And the gods of the copybook heading said, "If you don't work, you die."
Exactly. The sad fact is the economic system.
Sam and Marquez not in agreement.
The sad fact is that inflation wasn't the idea of the generous people. People like me who understand what it is to be poor and want their money to circulate, because if money isn't circulated, it's like clotted blood in an artery. It will kill you. The sad fact is, if you hoard any property, it's of no use to you. The fact is that if I were to steal from an abundant source of beautiful prey that I could feed off harmlessly, because I do know how to feed well, there would be a lot of rich people mad because Nathaniel Ashford broke the damn secret to economics, and they would kill me.
Much the same way that there are few who get to see the beauty of what you see before you hear this grand library. It's a accomplishment, and humans, and again I would say kind is included in this, is that even though we may be of the vampiric nature, we are still human in our mental thought. This to me is an accomplishment, and it is something that I hold praise on. The reason that few ever get to see it is because I am very the reason I am so very protective of this accomplishment is because there are those out there among both the kind and the kindred who would see but words, ink, paper. They would see no meaning in this. That is the reason, and it is the same way as to why these systems of inflation exist. Those that have developed them see them as a life goal, an ongoing project, and for anyone to step in and to say that that project is flawed, or that that project does not only benefit specific people, well, that is tantamount to a slap in the face to a lot of these people. And this is coming from me, of all people, probably one of the wealthiest men in some good distance of this domain.
Yeah, but, Walsh ends up remembering that toxic data remark. He kind of funny. The
You're muted, but
Walsh says, you know, I'm reminded of one of the sources that they kept. I actually looked up one of the sources that this author talked about, and the models from all the data they've been able to collect from economic and from writings of ancient Rome, of ancient China, of ancient Babylonia, all of these great civilizations that preceded ours had this exact problem where people started hoarding the resource counter in too few hands, combining with ecological lack of sustainability, and those societies collapsed over and over again into a new form of barbarism. I'm worried that I'm worried and agreeing with the author here that perhaps there might be a similar possibility that this toxic data issue, Prince, my prince, this is an accomplishment to you because of the fact that these words hold meaning. They hold value in their experiences, in the thoughts that were generated from them, in the ideas that have held the test of time. Correct?
that is correct.
Okay. Well, what if? And this is what I'm wondering is, what if the reason why you are so benevolent, or what if one of the reasons you are so benevolent and have tried to implement this council is that because of the fact that you have had access to a large amount of data, a large amount of experiences of thoughts and ideas, which have shown that these these ideas are more these ideas, and discussing these ideas is far more in touch with the reality of not only the human condition but of what is required for us to survive than the people who are hoarding the bean counters, for lack of a better word, who seem to, by hoarding the bean counters and trying to limit what information gets out to the public in general, gets out to the average person, the lowest of the low amongst the kind, for example, might actually be perpetuating the very fall yet again of another great civilization, and we might have to deal with another round of barbarism, but this time with 7 billion people on our doorstep as a round of barbarism. Okay. I'm not saying that this system is the way to solve it. I'm just curious if whether or not what the author's driving at about the possibility of lack of, the lack of sharing data and pursuit of the monetary capital system in and of itself as the sole goal might be actually putting us on the same precipice as other great civilizations.
Oh, very much so. But if I can continue to kind of extrapolate on your preface here, all empires fail. The next one to go will probably be America. It's sad, but it's true. It's got clogged arteries. People are hoarding the money. People are going strictly for self-interest, and that's exactly what's happening. What's going to happen is probably going to be a bloody coup of people much like me that are just honestly so damn sick of the powerful and the wealthy and the rich, and probably sick of never having enough, probably sick of seeing every achievement they've ever achieved in their lives being taken for granted and taken away from them. But the whole world will continue to spin on. Things will change, as they always have, through time. And I'm pretty sure, Sam, you can back me up on this because you've lived a fuck ton longer than I have. Britain is an empire where I spent most of my life, spent most of my youth, and, I traveled around a lot of different places other than that. No longer exists, but Britain still exists. The physiological place still exists. If you were to bring back King Arthur, he would weep and mourn, but the place still exists. Things change. Empires will fall. These things happen. A global catastrophe, I don't see it, but it will be a tragedy for the people that have hoarded the beans and go, ha 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 ha, I'm such a genius, because they're going to wind up on a pike or something. But
well, I'm hoping.
Yeah. Oh, go on.
Walsh, I need Walsh to make a humanity roll at this point before he actually says what is going into his head.
Humanity.
That's conscience.
Okay.
If he's trying to hold it in, like not actually say something, self-conscience.
Well, the thing is, no, it's not he's trying to hold it in. It's more specifically he's trying to analyze what he's about to say.
Self-control. Oh, okay.
Self-control.
Yeah. See, the thing is, he's about to say something regarding the revolution and actually agree with it. And the problem is that because of his own code, he has to fight off a
self-control. Yeah,
to not
say it.
Yeah. So self-control. Okay, let me pull up the self-control roll here. Okay. Control is 2.
Good luck.
Yep, we'll see. Well, at least he's going to say it, but he hasn't done anything with it. But this is where the remorse comes in. Oh, a 10. He got a success.
He doesn't have to say it.
Okay. Well, the thing is that Walsh rephrases his wording and says, "My concern about this is not the empire falling. It's more what happens to the average person under barbarism. I'm concerned that I would rather have a revolution of people like you." Says Walsh. I would rather have a revolution of people like Sam, like you, like Duke Menashe, like Marquez, like people who actually come together and discuss things and actually figure out what the hell will work in generating prosperity, and not only prosperity, but generating a place for people to be creative and thriving and innovative. I would rather have that revolution and actually still have some sort of a system where that can happen, rather than total barbarism, where, as Thomas Hobbes puts it, life is nasty, brutish, and short.
So you're trying to avoid the Dark Ages. Well, congratulations.
trying
We've
to-
had the
I'm-
exact same goal the entire time. Now,
Yep.
that fact is, barbarism is a temporary state. It always occurs slightly after these revolutions, but then there's always new champions to surface that will put in place another system, who, if they keep screwing up, will get their heads knocked off by another guy who wants to put in place another system. Sadly, the Weimar German system worked. It was a good system, but it was a stodgy Republican system, and people were suffering in the streets, hungry, without jobs, and they didn't have anything to do. So what surfaced was Hitler. There are never going to be extenuating periods of giant barbarism, but there will be catastrophes that happen because of things that happen in history. When America falls, it'll be massively weird and bad things will occur, but the world will continue to spin on. And
Walsh
we will
actually,
see it.
sorry, at this point, Walsh remembers a couple of other things that came across his scientific news feed the last the last week or so. Walsh actually says, "What about the sixth mass extinction problem and the fact that Earth has passed the carbon tipping point?"
To which I would say, honestly, you would have to talk to the world as a whole, and you would have to get them to, one, stop using fossil fuels, stop using any sort of plastic products, stop using any kind of useful convenience. You're
Not,
asking.
not if we redistribute, not if we repurpose those things. Plastics could still be fine. We just don't burn the shit.
I agree. I've always agreed with this.
Yeah.
Sad fact is, you won't get the rest of the world agreeing to it. They are all busy working. They're all struggling to survive. They don't really much care. I'm sorry, a meteor could hit the planet, and as long as there was one redneck with his two cousins that were moderately more attractive than him and his banjo, he would be happy.
Walsh literally, Walsh sits down in a chair. Walsh sits down in a chair, and realizing that that he and Walsh thinks that everyone is Walsh thinking that everyone's been roughly on the same page for a while, but can't figure out how to actually implement this system in a way that would get people to go, hey, wait a sec, I'm not sacrificing my freedom here. I'm just doing something more with my life and connecting everyone else to it. Walsh literally sits with his hands in his face, and you can see tears of blood flowing down his face at the moment. FYI, because of this, Walsh is down by about a point of blood, so I'm going to have to record that.
Good, that's fine.
He was at full. He is now at. Let me find it here.
Should be 9, yeah.
Blood now because of the fact that he's wasted a whole point on this. It's
I think what we have to, I think that the ones of us who are collectively gathered here, I think we are in agreement that a change in the system is beneficial, but there is absolutely no way that changing the system, this is Marquez speaking, we are in agreement that changing the system so drastically is not the way to go, because no matter how you set up a system, there's going to be somebody that's going to suffer. It's the natural order of things is that suffering occurs, and it's through this suffering that humanity learns to better itself. And I know that's a very Machiavellian term of train of thought. It is true. It is through suffering that those below are able to withstand the onslaught of those above. It's like as I have said, there are a good many in my district who do live below the kind of poverty line, but at the same time, there are many, and I vet lots of kind that use the use Hatteras and Buxton, Corolla, that whole area as a bit of a retirement community, and there is a lot of money that flows in and out of that area. It is a tourist trap after all, but because there are those that are not able to take Saturday evening and go down to the water, or a Sunday afternoon and just fish off the pier. It comes to those that cannot do that as often, find that they enjoy their time more because it is a rarity for them. It's a one-off. It's a gift from on high for a lot of them. And because they are able to, they're able to, as Sam kind of holds up a finger. I think I see where the Duke is going on this one. It makes it more. They cherish their experiences more because they have them less. As Marquez points over to the Prince, yes, sir, that's exactly what I was saying.
Even if you
Walsh,
were to create a perfect system, there is no way to make people perfectly happy.
Walsh literally, Walsh literally is at this point is frustrated. Not that he's not frustrated at anybody in the room or anybody on the phone. He's just frustrated at the. He's frustrated that he cannot see a way to. He sees a goal that this author was getting at, and that expresses his own true feelings. But Walsh cannot find a way to adopt anything out of this in a way that would. He says, is there any way that we could at least even just have even just a way where we could start doing more research and trying to find a way to be more benevolent as kindred to the kind population across the board? Can we find a way that people can still appreciate their experiences, but are able to reach even higher because we've been able to give them a good starting point? Is there any way we can start working on such an idea?
That is simply what every good man does. They try and better themselves and enjoy their lives. They try to better the lives of those around them. Depending upon the person and depending upon their circumstances, you might have that person go down in history as a great king or a great leader, but you never hear about Jimmy Stewart, who gave every $20 that he received and 30 extra. You don't hear about the common man that does that, but that's essentially what every good person does. They try to better the world around them. That's just all. Being active is what we're trying to do. Essentially, by fighting the beast, that's what a good person does.
Walsh literally chuckles as the tears are still running, and says, "And he shall not, and he shall not enter the kingdom of heaven, for he has already had his reward."
Mm-hmm.
At which point you see that Sam actually hands you a handkerchief from his pocket.
Yeah, but Walsh literally chuckles and says, 2 pennies. And and literally says,
At
2
this,
pennies.
your namesake perks up and says, Harry, from one Harry to another, you may not be able to change the world, but for one person, you can change their world.
Walsh says, I need to find a way to apply this paper in a scientific manner, at least for myself. Even if I can't change the world with this, I need to find a way to at least see if this paper is applicable in any way, shape, or form. If this is a scientific system, it must hold up some way empirically to some level of existence. That I still need to find a way to test it. That's the important part.
Well, I believe
Go ahead,
that
Will.
testing it will not be a problem. As you see, the paper itself, without ever having said a word, can be measured by somebody's very existence. This, you'll see that this paper, you said it was released in a Canadian journal. Is that correct?
Yeah, it was released in a Canadian journal called Autism Zone.
Well, the very fact that you've been able to acquire this paper and you live here in the United States is proof enough alone that the system works. There's the system of information exchange via the kinds exists via the kinds include what's the word I'm looking for? Prince reliance. Oh yeah, that's a good one. The kinds reliance on the internet and this rapid information exchange is proof alone that the paper works. The fact that we're even standing here tonight talking about the damn thing is proof that it works. It makes the mind move. It sets hands to task. It awakens a passion in people, much like it has awakened awakened a passion in you. And there are others that will be passionate about this cause. It is simply a matter of locating and communicating with those that are passionate. And as Ashford over there, his his of oratory may not be as our brand may not be as fiery as his. The passion remains. It's a drive that strikes directly at the heart of the person who holds it. And I think I understand where you're coming from, and that your passion is not being understood. And you understand it. It's not that we don't understand your passion. We absolutely understand the passion. We can understand where you're coming from. I believe everyone in the room here has something they're passionate about, but and there are those who misunderstand, and there are those who are corrupt. And there's little, if anything, that you as a person, or even you as a collective of your clan, or those that agree with you, can do with, about changing those people's minds who just seem to corrupt. It seems to human nature.
Walsh, at this point, something twigs in Walsh, and this is tied back to the other to the. Do I need to remake the intelligence occult roll again?
I don't see why you would.
Okay.
Let it roll. Let it roll.
Walsh literally says, with you know, as he's mopping up the tears of blood, he says, the only way that I'm going to be able to tell if this system is even workable, not just the only way that I'm going to be able to try to see if this system works is to literally adopt it myself and see where it leads.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna have to find a way to internalize this system to the point where I can follow it through to wherever it may lead, and if I can find a way to make this work if I can find a way that with the empirical data to make this work, at least with myself and with a few others, and then maybe we can find a way to extrapolate it to the rest of the world. I mean, I just got a text back from Duke Menashe, which said that the system has already been adapted to a certain extent by the Nosferatu, or he already mentioned it earlier. Maybe there's a way whereby they've figured something out in terms of practical usage that can be rejigged or remolded for other areas that allows for this freedom of communication and freedom of consultation to happen. Maybe there's something missing here.
This is why, for a large point, the Ventru were obsessed with lineage. Because they were obsessed with personal history, because they wanted to keep accounts of what happened and what was lost and what was found and kept and cherished. Essentially, they were trying to remember ways of telling stories that no one else was going to hear. And by coming forward with these archives, Ashford points down with a very sharp little nail down at the collection of papers and oddities that he's collected. Essentially, all I'm trying to do is share out some of that hidden knowledge, share out some of that, and possibly make the world a slightly richer place, because not a lot of people remember it. My clan is quite possibly one of the oldest, because my personal bloodline goes back all the way to Troy, which honestly was, 2,000, 3,000 years ago?
Walsh nods and says, if your lineage goes back that far, hang on. Something occurs to me, and I'm actually going to have him make an intelligence debate roll at this point. He's going to go into a Bruja philosophical moment. So I'm going to roll intelligence, intelligence, performance, specialties, oratory, and debate.
Go for it.
So this is 6 dice. No, sorry, 7 dice. And we are looking at, 1 success. No, 2 successes.
Yep.
We're looking at 2 successes, both 8s.
Yep.
Walsh literally says at this particular point, maybe what it is that this paper is maybe the way that we can achieve this paper, if at all, is that every clan has somehow collected its own version of information. The Ventru by collecting the story lineage down the line, the Nosferatu by collecting information across sectors, the Bruja by maintaining philosophical traditions all the way down, and keeping the ideas alive for further consideration. What about the other clans? What about the Toreador? I know that you guys perceive art. What if art is what if art is kept? I mean, they mentioned here about art as being another way of conveying an experience of reality. What if we were all able to figure out? What if we were able to figure out a way cross discipline, cross family or cross clan to build a collective institution of these, stories, the knowledge, the experiences. If we had something that was a perusal of all of this, like Sam's library but bigger, extrapolating all this, and then only those who wished to, come in and experience that stuff and start analyzing it for, to try to apply that experience and knowledge to another aspect of our existence. Maybe that might be a starting point that would give us a benefit for future generations of kindred and of kind alike. I'm not saying we have to allow everybody in. Well, actually, we probably would. But my point is that we could just have it available and leave clues out so that anyone who wishes to follow up to it could get here. I mean, Sam, you invited me to your library. I am eternally grateful for this. The fact that there's such information around us. The fact that you've shown me this great work. I'd like to donate copies of my books that are the more technical and mathematical aspects to the library so that they are not forgotten in future generations.
What are you waiting for?
Walsh literally hands the books over and says, "I've got more copies back at my. I've got a couple of other copies back at my old place, but here, consider this a donation to the library that of engineering and math text that will be a starting point. What if we were able to find a way? The kind rely on the internet. The kind rely on the internet, but they have this technology. What is it? He accesses the file, brain fingerprinting, where they can literally see what is in a person's memory. Now, obviously, we don't have that, but we have other things that might. What if we had memory tellers? What if we had? We have the capability of auspex, do we not? As a species, we have the capability of auspex to draw information out of a person's mind and plant it in another. What if we had people whose job it was in our vampiric or kindred society to literally preserve memory, to preserve the memories of as many people as possible and pass those memories down through telepathy over and over again, and that those memories might be consulted as a living memory database.
Ashford holds up one finger. Oh.
It sounds good on paper, as which Marquez, seeing Ash's finger goes up, thinking he's thinking the same thing. And I will give me just a second because I think we're on the same train of thought here. Mm-hmm. It's an excellent idea, but as I've said before, there are those that will always seek to corrupt that which is good.
You're right, and this is where I think that bit of the scientific system was supposed to come in play, is that by having multiple lines of the memory tellers, one could check one's memories against multiple groups and be able. There was a remark by someone who said that science is a self-correcting process to a certain extent, if done right. It finds the flaw. It finds the lack of successful replication exposes the fraudulent papers, like that guy, Dr. Andrew Wakefield, who claimed that vaccines and autism were connected. His paper was eventually exposed as not only being fraudulent, but the replications and the failed replication attempts of his work were actually what led people to investigate that paper as being fraudulent. Maybe there's a way we could adopt that with our collective of information that we have preserved over the centuries.
Well, that's exactly the plan. You know, according to these ancient texts, going far back enough, the oldest of us could actually plumb the memories in the blood of the victims by sheer use of will. They could peruse the victims' life stories. The reason why the practice fell out of favor was it scarred the mind of the predators and we lost too many of our kind. Plumbing blood memories made them feel remorse. It made them want to die with the victims. It made them want to finally end the atrocity after they could no longer stand it because having so much experience, having so much emotion in you that you can no longer feel made them remember just how inhuman they are.
My
And
prince.
oh, go on. Go on.
Sorry, you were saying, Duke Marquez.
The only problem here is if we limit ourselves to not experiencing those memories just because they put us into a place of or into a location that we're not comfortable with, what does that do to us as a species? That if we only remember the good times, we learn nothing from the mistakes that we've made, as not just or the kind of made or we have made.
Exactly, Duke Marquez. Exactly, Duke Levitolia. And this is precisely why I'm proposing something akin to writing down the experiences and having a library, a plethora library, very much like the Princes of all experience that we have, coupled with a memory, coupled with the ability to preserve memories. Because if we manipulate society, do we not, to a certain extent?
Certain extent, most certainly. Yes, of course.
So if we are the ones who are manipulating society, does it not behoove us to try to find a way to preserve memories as much as possible in as many places as possible so that we might be able to refer to those memories and be able to have future generations of kindred, or even our future selves, if we're still surviving a few billion years down the line, be able to go, oh, well, this is the experience that we had of what didn't work. Here's what we can try that might work.
Here's exactly the reasons why I am hesitating to do this, but Ashford actually writes down several phone numbers of individuals of his own clan that have the very opposite view of him. Gustav Reinstein, Hardstedt the Elder, several of the OG Ventru that have stock in oil companies, military industrial complexes, third world arms depots. First, you'd have to convince these gentlemen, and you would have a hard time doing it.
Walsh says Walsh actually starts phoning some of these numbers. Sorry, I know that you guys don't have to play these NPCs. I'm expecting they have flappers who shut this conversation down.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But as Walsh contacts these numbers, do I have to do a successive roll, or can I just do one roll to repeat the process?
No, you don't even need to roll. You just do it by role play.
Yep.
Well, yeah. Walsh literally tries to explain the. Walsh contacts these numbers by text and sends a copy of the paper with an annotation saying, "We are at the lower levels. We're at the lower levels discussing, we're at the lower levels discussing the possibility of preserving knowledge." And preserving both the kind and our knowledge for future generations to be able to determine what didn't work, and from that figure out what does work in being able to make society a better place. For all of us. Do you wish to get in on this? And that basically, and says, please by all means send the thoughts back to this. Please send the thoughts back to me accordingly of what your ideas are. He probably gets no response, but at least he tries.
Yeah, the responses that you do get pretty much get the gist of and you matter how.
Yeah. Walsh literally just Walsh think I'm actually going to make a chance die roll. This is whether or not Walsh actually gets a better thinks better of doing something. Walsh is tempted to text chance plus. He actually goes through with the text and remark in the back, and this is very unfortunate for him. Minus, he doesn't go through with the text. And neutral will decide what happens if he does text. Neutral. Damn it. Basically, right. Walsh texts back. Walsh texts back to these people who say "and you matter how." Isn't that an ad hominem attack? I thought that we all learned. I thought that we all learned that kind of thing was ineffective eons ago. Is he about to get himself killed?
Yeah, no answer.
And honestly, you have made Ashford's night by simply annoying some people higher up on the tree that have no idea where he got these phone numbers. He's honestly
not a clue.
Yep.
He's just laughing his ass off, doubling over.
His laughter, though, is sort of striking juxtaposed against the that look of utter fear that has just fallen over the prince's face.
Right. Walsh literally chuckles at the whole thing and goes, "Yup, this is exactly what I was, And Walsh says, if we cannot adopt this system for our state, if the Ducal Council is, if we agree that this system is a good idea on paper, but there is no way to implement it for our state, especially with how the Ducal Council may or may not decide to go with this, if and when I bring this as a formal proposal to the council, Walsh actually says, yeah, I was kind of planning on putting a resolution forward that we discuss and figure out if this paper is adoptable, at the Ducal Council level. But in light of this conversation here, it may just turn out to be that I may just have to. Can we possibly decide that whether or not we might be able to do this kind of something akin to these systems in our own in the districts that the Dukes are currently represented here? I might speak to my patron Duke Dannington to see if he'd be willing to adopt a similar system. And is this something that that you Prince Josiah, that Duke Menashe and Duke Levitolia would be interested in at least trying to see if we could find a way to hodgepodge a system like this into effect? Or is this something that's not even worth going forward with?
As Sam speaking. Well, there are 4 major universities within my district. Those 4 major universities are enough to set the population's minds aflame with a thirst for knowledge. Otherwise, well, if they're in these colleges for legitimate reasons and not there just to throw sports balls back and forth, then they already have had their minds set ablaze with the quest for knowledge, much like I have. Implementing a system here, at least amongst a few, could work, though I'm unsure as to those that would agree to be bound by a contract of sorts. It is something that I feel could be recommended, but to place any kind of shackles of moral philosophy upon the kind, even of our fellow brothers and sisters of kindred in any district, is a wanton, clear restriction of their personal freedom, and that's something that I have fought against for many years and continue to do so.
Then might I propose, my prince, says Walsh, that we circulate the paper amongst those universities. Amongst the kind population in general in these districts, and see whether or not the kind population see things the way, see this as a possible method of changing the system, and see whether or not they come to agree with it of their own accord.
Oh, of course, go on, go on. I mean, humans are completely different species, but they're still, basically the same. Um, Good God, though, I never thought I would laugh so hard. Oh my, just thanks, Harry. That was very amusing.
I'm glad to be of service. One other thing that makes me think about this, my prince. Should we forward this up to the Archon?
Oh, no, 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 no,
No.
no.
Both voices on my end say no.
It seems he had
Okay.
rapidly tells you no.
All right, so we keep this out of the eyes of the Arch. We keep this off the desk of the Archon for now. And what I will do then is I will continue circulating the paper in your guys' districts with your permission, and just seeing how the kind population handle it. If that's okay with you guys.
Reasonable, reasonable.
The phone says it's already currently being introduced in Asheville, just so you know.
Walsh smiles at this and goes, "Okay, then we'll wait and see how this manifests."
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, if you guys don't mind, like I said, I know it's been, I know we've had a fascinating conversation this evening, and thank you, my prince, for inviting me to the library. I was hoping I might be able to peruse some of your works on classic philosophy and as well as also classic political theory and scientific methodology, as well as moral theory. Specifically, so this way, if it turns out that there is some way in which this paper falls apart on its own precepts, I can help. I might be able to have a help in writing a rebuttal for the academic world to this paper.
Third
Or
shelf
a
on
follow-up.
third left. Sam's eyes closes if he's trying to remember something. Third shelf on the left. 15 or 16 rows. So it's somewhere around in that area.
Walsh says thanks. And with that in mind, Walsh actually starts beelining from the group to that particular area so he can start perusing books and trying to figure out how to write a rebuttal to this paper or a follow-up to this paper if it still holds true after reading what's in there.
Also, before you find yourself too deep in your research, though, Mr. Walsh, there is one thing I think that would be of benefit to you. There is, and I'm assuming you are of the age to still know how to operate a record player.
Sorry, operate a record player, you said?
Yes.
I'm assuming you are of
Yep.
adequate age to understand how to do that.
Yeah, I was embraced only I was only embraced like in the just pre-years of World War I. So yeah, I'm pretty sure I can still operate a record player.
There is an album in my collection, it's in that same general area, of a work of art that the kind developed, a work of art that I am partial to, a gentleman by the name of Andrew Lloyd Webber. As you see, Marquez's eyes kind of perk up. The kind are partial to a form of artwork known as theater, specifically musical theater. Mr. Weber is thought of to be one of the masters of the art form. There is a performance, a piece that he wrote known as Jesus Christ Superstar. I have a copy of one of the original albums of the.
At this, both voices on my end start chuckling.
There is specifically a piece on there entitled Poor Jerusalem that you may find some insight into the lyrics of, but you may enjoy the entire performance.
Walsh notes that and proceeds to head over to that section as well.
Oh, you notice the collection of records is more like a anthology of records. There's shelves and shelves and shelves of these things.
I think that Walsh will be spending the rest of the night before heading back, unless he's kicked out of the library. Just perusing the records of the prince's library, so this way he can see if this paper will still hold.
Well, gentlemen, this has been very amusing, and honestly, some very good philosophical discussion, but as you can see, the individuals that would come and listen are not part of the problem.
Yeah. And Walsh figures that and realizes. Walsh says, "Yeah, if this is going to work at all, people have to accept it of their own free will and accord." And with that, Walsh heads back off to start looking at books and bows to the prince and says goodnight to the fellow dukes as he peruses the library. And unless there's anything else, I get the feeling the scene ends.
Yep.
Just one thing, to which is Marquez noticing that as Mr. Walsh steps away, waiting until Walsh appears to be out of earshot, he kind of mutters to himself, "I swear, that man is either going to be the death or the salvation of the kindred species."
Possibly both. Who knows?
That we can wrap up if you'd like.
Is there anything from David? Is there anything from David or Harry that needs to be covered?
Not really. No, I think that'll do it.
All right. Stay tuned, everybody, for future scenes describing this paper. Plugging the journal Autism Zone here in Victoria, British Columbia, and the paper on sciences morality on page 19 of the 2016 issue. There will be a link in the description below, and yeah, we'll go from there.
And also, just a couple of things before we go. Tarheel by Dark, we'd also like to send a special shout out to Blue Ox Games over in Greenville, North Carolina, for providing us with a large portion of the entertainment and the ideas for this season's plot. You guys can check them out at blueoxgames.com. They have pretty much all of your gaming needs: Magic the Gathering, Pathfinder, D&D 5, and even a little of these Vampire the Masquerade books, if you'd like to special order them. Again, ladies and gentlemen, that's blueoxgames.com.
You, ladies and gentlemen, for watching. And with that, we bid you good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you happen to be.